Hello everyone who is watching this video. This is a quick demonstration of a watercolor painting. This is my subject, so I'm not going to talk a lot. I'm just going to go straight to the point. Anyone who will be following this tutorial can ask me and I will send this picture to you. The paper I'm using is 100% cotton. I've painted something on it before, but still, for the quick demonstration, it's completely fine. I have my water over here. I have several brushes. All of them are synthetic. I'm not sure if I'm going to use all of them. Most probably not. And I have palette and paints over here. So I will start by adding the important lines. Basically, this subject is all about horizontal lines and a couple of accents, like this tree, for example, or fence. In this particular picture, I don't quite like the way this tree sits in the very corner, so I'll move it somewhere here. That will make more sense composition-wise. Just because the sky is so beautiful, I want to show the sky more. And by the way, I've cut the format. I made it smaller, and that's why I have the scotch here, the paper tape. But you don't have to do it. It's just my kind of preference. So first, I will add this line. Because the sky is so beautiful, we will have more sky than the land, pretty much like in this picture. So that would be the sky. Very rough, just as you can see, it's not a straight line, it's just a wiggly horizon line where you can see silhouettes of trees, some houses or something like that. Now the second line we have is somewhere here. Actually, this is the river, and we'll probably merge. You can see that there are like two stripes. We'll probably make just one to make it more simple and more readable. We don't have to overcomplicate things. So now this is where this tree ends and the river starts, and here, and now I'm drawing this line. Very light. I don't have to draw very thick lines. It's just a little kind of hint for myself where to stop. Now, this is where this tree will sit, probably somewhere here. The tree is, I'm just showing it like this. And here we have some bushes. And here again we have some bunch of trees. maybe here we will have another bunch of bushes, but they are kind of sitting a bit closer to us. Something like that. And the shadow from the tree. That's it. So that's our initial drawing. Everything else we will do with watercolors. Before I start painting anything, I want to pick the right colors. Just want to make sure that mixes will work good together. And by the way, I forgot to mention that I also have a cotton cloth. It's very important. I have some paper just to try my mixes on, and here I have some pink color. I want to see how this pink will work with different blues. So for example, the cobalt blue. I think it's quite nice. And the cobalt blue I think will work well as well for this part. Now for this particular color, I have this very nice red that I can use, or if you don't have it, maybe we can mix some of our cadmium red. I think the closest to cadmium will be this one with yellow. Mix some peachy color. Or if you have orange, or also pre-mixed orange, also can be used. Okay, so I will start with the sky. First I need to mix enough paint on my palette, just so I don't have to do it as I go. I'm making a couple of puddles, more clean and vibrant pink, more of the like violet, and something closer to blue. And the reddish color, this one. Maybe some of it will be more yellow. Taking the big brush, and it's possible to do it wet technique, but you will need to kind of be very careful with the flow of all this paints. I will try to do it wet and dry. So I'm loading my brush. When you're working wet and dry, you need to have your brush full of pigment and water. And when you work wet into wet, it's the opposite. So I need to make sure that I have enough of liquid here, enough of water and pigment, so my painting doesn't dry in too quick. That's why when I leave some area where I'm not working currently, I'm kind of dropping some paint there, just so it doesn't dry off in that area. More blue here. And this can be done under a little angle as well. It will be more convenient, but just because it's quite difficult for me to record it as it is, I'm going to keep it like that. So in watercolor we always start with the lightest. So I'm just I might not be able to do those darker clouds right away. Maybe I will leave it for later. Or if I manage to do it quick enough, then I will add them right away. Now I'm washing my brush and I will take some of that orangey or reddish kind of color. And making it more vibrant in some places, especially here. And now I'm taking some yellow, adding some yellow under. And you can see closer to the ground, this the sky becomes more kind of dirty grayish, so I'm mixing whatever I have on my palette to achieve that. Because I don't want my paint to dry here like this, I will make a soft transition over here, let it flow, and as you can see, in the water we have reflected sky. So I'm taking the same colors that I had in the sky, and I'm just dropping these colors here. It's pretty much the same thing. Don't be afraid to cover the tree and whatever you have there. It's not a big deal at all, because they are much darker and they will be on a different layer. Can even continue with the blue over here. So, as you can see, even this grass is kind of, it's not green, it's far from green, it's something bluish, pinkish. So you can add the same colors over here as well. Now, before you proceed to the second layer, you need to make sure that your painting is completely dry. And now I'm going to apply water again. This will not work if you are not using completely cotton paper. If your paper is made of cellulose, then most likely the previous layers will start moving, which is not ideal for us. So now we need to make sure that we don't have too much water. So no drops hanging anywhere. Like this. You need to pick them up. Okay. In reality, the painting looks a bit more vibrant than on the screen, but I still lack more vibrancy in this area, and I want now as well to add the darker parts of those clouds. As you can see, they're kind of dirty purple. So I'm picking up this vibrant red color and just applying it here. And I will mix this purple. I'll take ultramarine blue, maybe some of that color that I just used, and I need to make it more gray. I'll use some burnt sienna. Again, balance it out with ultramarine blue. So I think that's the color we are looking for. And before it's too dry, before it's too late, I'm applying those darker clouds. Some, like here, they're a bit more dark, then they become lighter. And then even on the bottom, they are also kind of lighter and more closer to the red, so I'm adding more red here. Might add a bit of that, like a bigger cloud over here. Bigger, more gray. Just to show kind of perspective and 3D dimension. So the clouds on top that I'm just making them up, they're bigger than this one's, bigger and more intense. But you can stick to the picture and just leave it as it is. Now again, I can try to continue working on this first row, on the farther trees, on this row of trees and buildings, whatever we see here, but I'm a bit concerned. So I will make it a bit wet from here down, but I need to make sure that I don't touch anything higher, because it will create a problem otherwise. Now, while I will need to mix something similar that I've done here. Some dark bluish, so blue, ultramarine blue, and burnt sienna is my go-to gray. And I just mix it in different proportions. And in this case, we have warmer kind of gray color. You can see that it's kind of reddish, so I'm also adding red to this mix, but it's still quite dark. I think it will be okay. Starting from the top here, and I'm just making this very playful silhouette. Make sure that your paint is not too flowing, not too fluid. We don't want this paint to flow and to create like very, very thick very big thick line. So the paint I have, as you can see, and now I've used it up, so I need to mix more. It's quite thick, so it's not going to spread too far. Somewhere you can drop a little bit of a different kind of shade, more pink, for example. More red. These noises are from my dogs that are waiting to be fed, so they start going crazy. And now it's all completely dry. As you can see, this area has spread a little bit on the water, but it's not bad. It's actually very good because it looks like reflections. It looks like those trees got reflected in the water. So now, next thing we're going to do is cover this area, the grass. For that I will mix a few colors. One will be more like dirty purple, another one will get a bit closer to the green here, closer to us, to the bottom of the paper. Our mind dictates us that we need to color the grass green, obviously, just because we know that the grass is green, but in the picture we can see clearly that this is far from pure, clean green color, and it's quite dark as well, so this area needs to be darker than our sky, but slightly lighter than this and this, lighter than the trees behind and this row of the trees. I'm taking cobalt blue, mixing it with some red, the cold red, the one that is a little bit towards the blue, alizarin crimson, for example, and a bit of burnt sienna. And I'll mix some greener color as well. So I'll take also the blue, the same blue, and add some yellow to it. So the closer to us, we will see a bit more of that green. The real color of the grass, but farther away it's more of a kind of reflection of the sky. But what I have now is two kind of greens, so I think I'll balance it out with some brown, which is a burnt sienna. So I'm just trying to achieve the color that I think will work. I think something like that. Okay. Diluted a bit with water. But you see, it's quite thick. It's quite a thick color. Now there are two options. We can either make it wet and then pour this pigment on the wet surface, or we can do it on the dry paper. I think it will be easier to make it slightly wet. So take a bigger brush, carefully making this wet, but make sure that you don't cover the water. So I only touch with my wet brush everything up to the river, and I'm making sure that there is no puddles, so it's just evenly wet, damp, I would say. There's no puddles. If we're working wet into wet, we need to make sure that we don't have very liquid pigment, otherwise it will flow and spread. So we need to have it like this, not too watery, more on the thick side. And I'm taking a bit of this cream and kind of introducing it to the mix that I've created earlier. Okay. Here we go. So it's important that you don't cover the river. Don't make it wet, otherwise if it's wet, the paint will flow there, and we don't want that. Somewhere we can add a bit more purple, so it doesn't have to be all very even, but make sure that if you add this slight changes in the temperature, like a little bit more purple, a little bit more blue, then they have to be very similar in value, and not too different in terms of like not vibrant purple or vibrant blue. It will not look nice if you will make this difference too obvious. Quick, you see, to make it quicker, I'm using the side of the brush. I'm not painting it vertically like that, I'm painting it like this. Want to make it more green, closer to us. So, a bit more blue. A bit more burnt sienna. Bigger brush, I'll probably wipe a little bit here. Make it a bit lighter. But you see, it's a clean and slightly damp brush. It's not wet. looks like a little bit of fog or something here. And now I want to add a bit of those dark, I don't know what it is, bushes or something. So for that I need to mix really intense, really dark color. I'm taking ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. More ultramarine blue, more ultramarine blue. And I will make some of those like bushes or something, little dots here and there. Just, they have to be very kind of imperfect, no pattern. So somewhere they're bigger, especially closer to us, they should be bigger. Farther away they become smaller. More intense, less intense. Sprinkles here and there. Okay. Can even add some texture with clear water. So I'm taking a bit of clear water and making this sprinkle somewhere here and there, but not too much. Just that would be enough. You can see that this like flowers or something, they start appearing. It's because the paper was not dry. That usually happens. So it can be as it could be a very nice touch, you know, a very nice effect, or it can completely ruin your artwork if you didn't mean to do this kind of thing. So now I'm going to dry it again, and then I will add the rest of the bushes and trees. Now it's completely dry, and I'm going to paint probably this row of trees. It's darker than the trees behind, but not as dark as this tree. So, and as you can see, the color is like dark purple, but dirty kind of purple. So it's not black, it's something warmer than black. So for that I will take ultramarine blue, quite thick, and burnt sienna. I always mix all grays pretty much from these two colors, and then some of the cooler red. And dog hair. And I can leave some of this color more brown, for example, so more burnt sienna, and some of it more red. But it's not note that it's not an open and vibrant violet or a purple color. It's very close to black. Okay, that should work. For this, I think I will need a couple of brushes, so I will continue using this one. And for those little thin elements of the trees, I don't want them to be too thick. and I'm not sure if this brush will be thin enough, so I'll use the thinner one. If you don't want to improvise and you're not sure if you can do it, maybe you want to remind yourself where all of that is located here, but very like softly, very approximately. It doesn't have to be harsh. Here we're not, and it's actually nice how somewhere it's more blue, somewhere it's more purple, and we're not trying to cover everything. So leaving these white spots here and there. Now, before I went too far, I will take a clean brush, make it wet, then wipe it very well, and then I'll make the edges softer. Again, wash it, wipe it, make it softer in some areas. Can try to do this side strokes actually for this interesting texture. And again, the same brush, clean and damp. Now I'll put this brush down and I will take some of that color with this thin one. I'll add those trunks, tree trunks here and there. Important that they are not very kind of identical, that we're not repeating, making the same pattern, you know. So those lines are standing with different distance, so it's not like one line, second line, third line, as if someone planted those trees, you know, ideally with the same distance. Some of them are closer, some of them are like completely separate, thicker, thinner, something like that. Okay, more, maybe some more of the leaves here and there. Like that. Okay. Now this one. Can probably make it more soft. So for example, I'll make it wet. Take and just clean brush, slightly wet, and very gently, without scrubbing, and just making this area wet, and taking very thick pigment. I'm adding it here. Again, somewhere we can see through those bushes. So somewhere we can see this river appearing somewhere. Again, it's hidden. this darker pigment here and there. Now I can probably do this tree. So again, I'm mixing more ultramarine blue in this mix that I already have here, making it even more dark, intense. And again, you can, if your tree is now not very visible, then you can remind yourself how it goes. So you just need to kind of outline it approximately. Important that you don't make this line too thick, so don't make it too kind of chunky. It's nicer if it will be like this, like very thin, sophisticated. And then we have this couple of branches here and there. And again, I think the best thing we can do is some of those side strokes that will leave a little bit of texture. More blue, more burnt sienna, so darker color. The shadow under, might green, mix a bit of green to that, just some dark grayish color, pretty much. I want to make it softer, the shadow, so I'll make this area slightly wet. Also have some bushes, little trees or something on this line, but they're soft, so I'll mix some darker color again here, ultramarine blue with burnt sienna, quite thick, and then I'll again take a damp clean brush and I make a line here, and I put some of them. But again, important that you don't make them like this, you know? They are bigger, smaller, appearing, disappearing. Okay. Somewhere they create a line, somewhere it's separate bushes. here we have kind of bigger bushes closer to us, growing somewhere from here. To bring a little bit darkness to the shadow. And maybe a little bit more, a bit darker details to this tree. It's closer to us. Now the last thing is the fence. So I'm taking what I have here already, this dark mix and a thin brush, and I'm going to make it, I'm not going to copy it as it is here. I want to probably make it smaller and it will go like this. So I'm holding the brush vertically and I'm going to slide my hand across. You can see that the line is kind of appearing, disappearing. So it's better if it interrupts, it's better if it's not a uniform line. Here I can drop a little bit of a darker pigment here and there. And now I'm going to do second line. I decided to make it above. And the vertical lines there. Make sure that they're vertical, yeah? So if you make them under angle, it will not be believable, so. They have to be parallel to the size of the paper. And from here, probably where it's closer to us, I can make it slightly darker, so I'm mixing a bit more ultramarine, thicker ultramarine and burnt sienna. And you see, I don't mind to make this line a little bit more playful with some dots like that. And here, I mean, you can do just lines, horizontal lines like that, or you can do, for example, crossed lines. It's also possible. I'll probably do some like that and some like that. So some of them are horizontal, some of them are going to be crossed like this. But I'm not going to make to be too detailed here. So now here I'm going to remove some of that pigment from my brush and make it more transparent, and I don't want to give too much information, so it's important that you don't make it as detailed everywhere as it is here. So just concentrate on some areas and some areas leave unresolved. The details can easily be added with like dots here and there. These dots, they kind of make it more, they make everything seem more busy, more interesting. So point of interest, add some dots. Okay. Maybe a bit more lines here and there. Trying to make them thin, sophisticated. If you make them really thick, it will look boring, it will look horrible, so it's quite important. I think I want to add just a few more bushes over here that are not as kind of foggy as these, so more kind of clear. But for that I will mix a bit of burnt sienna into this green that I already have. So you see it's very thick, the consistency, and ultramarine. The consistency is like honey, very thick. And I'll take my bigger brush, wipe it, and where I want to add this bushes, I make a bigger wet area. And some ultramarine under. That will look like a shadow. And for example, maybe here as well. And again, ultramarine. As you may know, when you work with cotton paper, it absorbs the pigment and dries out much lighter. So this is what we see now. I've noticed that this area is a bit too light, so I'm going to add a little bit of color here, like a little gradient. I'm taking cobalt blue, or it could have been also ultramarine blue. And I will take some burnt sienna, and I'll take some lemon yellow. So you can see it's like grayish green, but I think I will need more of it, so I'm going to mix a little bit more. In some areas I will keep it more towards blue, in some areas I will keep it more green. And the brush has to be soaked in the color like that. If it's dry, it will be really difficult. So the previous layer will reveal under. Which is a good thing. We can still see the fence and whatever we applied before. I'm adding a little bit of purple to this. Oh, that's too much, so I will move to this bottle. Can add a bit of that purple here and there. And now, so make sure that you are using a lot of water, a lot of paint. So, oops. So it's not dry brush that you are just dragging around and it makes this scratchy noises. The brush has to go smoothly. And now just with a clean brush, I wash it, then wipe it almost completely, and then smooth it out over over here. Oops. Okay. While it's still wet, I'm going to bring some of that, some of those bushes back. So again, I need to mix a bit of ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, those flushes, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and quickly make a few drops here and there while it's still wet. So somewhere in some areas you can see, like here, I tried to add it, but it was already dry. But I'm going to continue where I can see that it's still more wet. I'm going to add more random marks. Closer, it gets bigger. So all the bushes and whatever you paint is bigger in size. Okay, I'm just thinking if I should go and do something here. I quite like it the way it is, but I just think that it lacks a little bit of color. I'll take the same red that I was using before. So it's this vibrant red, and I'll try to mix it with other red that I have. The camera doesn't really show this color, so it's more orange towards pink rather than orange. What I can see through the phone, it's like quite a dirty red, but in reality the color is nicer. So it's a warm orangey red mixed with other red that is more towards pink. Hope you understand what I mean by saying that. I'll take a big brush, clean big brush, and make this area wet, but very light moves. Like, try not to scratch anything, not to scratch the paper. It has to be very, very smooth. I almost like pour water on the surface and just smooth it out a little bit. Another thing you need to make sure is that you don't make it too wet and that you don't have any puddles sitting on the surface. And I'm taking this color and I'm just going to pour it just in one area. Just in one area. I don't want to get it everywhere throughout the sky. Just over here when the sun is from the left side. Maybe a bit more kind of violet color over here. While I still can add something while it's still wet. The other thing I have to do is to add the fence again. Again, I'm taking a bit of ultramarine blue. Whatever thin brush you can find. I mean, I'm using a different one this time, but it's just because it was near. This has to be dry. So if you try it and it's still wet and it kind of goes spreads, then it's not a good idea to continue and you will need to wait a little bit. want to make it like even more rough, and I don't want this fence to be very ideal. I want it to be like kind of broken and not so perfect. And again, adding the shadow, because again it kind of disappeared. So one more time. If you are not very accurate and you have little splashes like that, you can make them into birds. But make sure you're using thin brush and not making them too dark. Like sometimes you can do this, for example, to make them a little bit less intense. Closer to the top of the paper, they get bigger. It's important that your paper is completely dry when you do this. Higher, these birds can be also slightly darker, more intense in color, and lower they need to be more transparent, more watery, thin and small. When the paper is wavy like that, it means it's still wet, so I wouldn't personally do anything in this area. So I can dry it as well, but I just don't want to do it right now. So I'll try to make this, to paint this birds wherever I can, but avoid the area where I worked just now. Try to make different shapes of these birds, so they are not all like this, yeah. Some of them can look almost like dots. And you can see when I touched wet paper, it immediately started spreading. And try to avoid any sort of pattern. So now I look and I see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. This looks like a pattern to me. So I need to break it down, maybe by adding another bird here. Now I have a pattern over here. So always kind of try to avoid any repetitive moves, anything that looks like a pattern. Taking more dark paint. You know what? I've decided to add a little bit more color, so we can take a bit of more clean green. I will cover this area with a paper. You can do it, you can cover it with whatever you have. I will also put paints here, just so it kind of, to make sure that everything is covered. And I take quite thick pigment, and I'm just going to sprinkle it over here. Last thing that I decided to do is to add a little bit of color to the birds. So I'm going to take gouache, white gouache. It's quite thick, as you can see. And I will add it over here and mix it with a tiny bit of red. So it kind of looks like looks beachy, as if these birds, they reflect a little bit of this light. It's important not to overdo it, because we don't want it to be kind of too obvious. Maybe while we have this color on the brush, we can add a little bit, but super important not to overdo it. Just as if some leaves or some areas of these trees are catching a bit of that light. The paper is dry, and now I'm ready to remove the tapes. When you will be doing it, please make sure that the paper is completely dry.